Hey guys, it's April Bowden here from Truth or Talk. I'm out at the barn where my son goes horseback riding, and I had this thought and I thought I'd share it with you guys. I wanted to talk about how feminism has actually destroyed women. Now, I saw this video the other day from Karen Stronheim. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she's done a lot of great work on, she used to write a blog called Girl Writes What? I don't know if she still does. But she's a really good writer, and she had some really good videos, well-researched stuff on feminism and how that has really been just a horrible influence on society and how government is run and how the court system is run. And so she says something about society. She says that it's perfectly acceptable for a woman to show her husband a picture of better homes and garden and say, make this happen. So in other words, if it's like, I want you to redesign the kitchen, I want you to, do something like that, home renovations or whatever, it's perfectly acceptable for a woman to tell her husband, to go ahead and get that done, right? Even though it's going to be a lot of hard work, and, she doesn't have to earn the right to do that. She can just ask for it or just tell him to do it, and that's okay. But then on the flip side, if he showed her a picture from the Betty Crocker cookbook and said, make this happen, that, he would be looked at as sexist. And I kind of stepped back when she said that, and I thought, is that true? My reaction was, is that true? Because I didn't actually know that was true. I thought, if that's the case, then, nobody's calling my husband a sexist, but he does that all the time. And it could be because we have a different dynamic than what is considered normal in our society today, which everything in our society today is not normal, but we call certain things normal that aren't. So, when I was growing up, I had this, I used to watch old movies with my grandma, and, these were from like the 30s and 40s, and the women in the movies, it was like Rosalind Russell and Katharine Hepburn, and they'd be romantic comedies, so they'd be beside some, dashing guy like Cary Grant or something like that, right? And they always seemed kind of evenly matched, the guy and the girl. They had a really quick banter, and it was really funny. But it was always, they were usually career women, even like the Doris Day films. They were career women that knew that once they got married, they would quit their job to go home and, run the home. And it seemed very reasonable to do that, because if you think about the fact that she's going to get married, so that means now she's going to start thinking about becoming a mother, why would she continue to hold down a career? And so the post-feminist era, though, had women believing that they had to be these giant overachievers and try to do both. And Katharine Hepburn famously was, she was asked in an interview, and this was, she's kind of like this feminist icon to women, but she said something to the effect of, she was asked, can women have it all? Can women do both and have the career and be the great mother at the same time? And she said, no, they have to make a choice. You can't do both really well at the same time. One of them is going to suffer. And I can tell you, as a working mom, it's absolutely true. You can't have everything. You can't be working and then be a good stay-at-home mom at the same time. It's not even possible. But this idea that you could go out and that it was a better option for you because it would bring you some kind of independence from a man, so therefore you don't want to be dependent on a man, right? So you don't want him paying the bills and taking care of the family, because you want to have a job too. You want to have a career too. Then that was going to be that was somehow better, that somehow made you a stronger, more independent woman, is actually depriving women of their God-given divinity. And, when I was growing up, my mom worked. And when she came home from a long day of work, she had been working 8-10 hours. She didn't love cooking. She looked at it, if my husband, if my dad had said that to her, she, hey, make this happen, she probably would have been like, no, I'm going to call and order food, because she just didn't have time. There was just too much. By the time she got home, and it was like 6 o'clock at night, and then you got to cook dinner, and you got to help the kids with their homework, and you got to clean the house and do the laundry. It's like, that sucks. You don't want to, then you don't look forward to all those things, because right at the time where you're thinking you're going to go home and crash, your work's just beginning. So that was a terrible move. Women way went downhill. It was like this whole idea that was somehow an improvement on their lives, but it sucks. It was terrible. And she didn't, and as a result, I didn't grow up learning how to cook or do any of those kinds of things, or looking at any of that stuff as something that I could take pride in. But, so when I started having kids, I always assumed that I would go back to work, that I would that I would want to rejoin the workforce and have a career. But they were my boys are 2 years apart, so it was like baby, and it didn't really make sense financially to leave. And then when Aiden was 2, his older brother was 4 at the time, so I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and the 2-year-old has a vaccine injury, and so he has special needs, so then he has to go to the therapist office and all that stuff. It didn't make sense to try to get somebody outside to try and do all that stuff, take him to all the different places he had to go. It just didn't really make sense. So I ended up giving up that idea of going out and having the career, and realizing that this was my career, this was my life, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. My son, because of his illness and his vaccine injury and his severe gut disorder and his immune system problems, we went on a restricted diet, and we started off with a specific carbohydrate diet of the SCD. And over the years, we've tried a variety of different things, but it's basically grain-free, and it's, at the time, there wasn't the big paleo craze, so, I couldn't really get a lot of pre-made food, and if I could, it was, like, really expensive. It was like the price of gold, And so, so I cooked everything from scratch, and I remember the pride that I had when I made this Thanksgiving dinner that was grain-free, and it was all this stuff, and because I didn't know how to cook, I wasn't raised on any of that, and I wasn't raised learning those things, learning those skills. So being kind of forced into it was, I've taken more pride and more gratification from that, because it was something that I had to learn, that I wasn't a natural at. It wasn't just a God-given gift. We all have our talents and things that, come easy to us. And it wasn't something that came easy to me, and it wasn't something that I just, grew up knowing how to do. So the fact that, I was able to figure that out, and it took me a really long time. I had a lot of disasters, but that it took us a long time, and that I was able to provide my family with quality food that would make my son feel better and feel sick was the best thing that ever happened to me. Me, not just to them, but to me, because I felt good. I took pride in myself, being with them and doing things for them and taking care of them and giving them a clean house and changing their sheets and doing all that kind of stuff is what keeps them healthy, is what keeps them running. And I think of it as a privilege. And if women think that somehow that's degrading or that's a disadvantage, I don't think they understand how privileged it is to be a woman just by virtue of anatomy. Yes, it takes two, but what our bodies do when we get pregnant and when we deliver these babies, in the last one, my daughter, I know it was completely natural birth, and but because my previous son was almost 10 pounds, Aiden was almost 10 pounds, I had a twisted pelvis that I didn't know I had. And, you know, I sat up on the bed delivering a baby, and the midwife took a scarf and she wrapped it around me and shook me a couple of times, and that baby popped out without any drugs, with stuck on my pelvis. And she had been previously stuck. Well, we jarred her off, and, you know, using a scarf. And then there she was, you know, a being. And then when you, Verstine made a video a while ago, a long time ago, right after Angelina Jolie had that bizarre double mastectomy, because she was, she had some genetic tests that said she was predisposed to getting cancer. And it was just weird. And anyway, so she had no cancer, but she took off both of her breasts, surgically removed, and because of this genetic test. And so Verstine did a video about it, and we had someone comment on it about how useless breasts are. She said, they're literally bags of fat. And I was like, wow, that's what women think? Women think that their breasts are bags of fat? Let me tell you, you know how you see mothers in the store, you see them walking around and they're just kind of like obsessively kissing their babies' heads and stuff like that? Well, the reason that they do that is because the baby doesn't have an immune system. Babies actually don't have immune systems until they're like 6 months old, and then it's not fully developed until they're like 18 months old. So they're really, the only way that they can have immunity is through their mother, through mother's milk. So it's not just an amazing nutrient. It's not just liquid gold. It's literally the only thing. You take in the baby's pathogens from kissing them on their head and taking in, you know, absorbing anything that they're coming into contact with in the environment, and your body will create antibodies to the pathogens that the baby has interacted with, specifically designed to help the baby fight it, because they don't have their own immune system. So human babies are very similar to marsupials. I mean, they're really dependent for the first couple of years. So you think that you carry bags of fat, that they're sexual objects, that they're merely sexual objects? They're miracles. They're the sign that God exists, because it's so perfect. It couldn't be more perfect. It couldn't be more perfect what they can do. And you've been given this. This is, you know, as a woman, this is what you have. And if you somehow think that you're being degraded or disadvantaged, or, you know, that it's sexist for your family to ask for food that they want to eat to make them happy and keep them happy and keep them fed, when your man's like supporting you, if he, you know, and if you do stay home with the kids, then, and he's going out and supporting you, and you don't want to cook and don't want to take care of the family and don't want to do any of that stuff, you know, and I'm not trying to be virtue signaling. I'm not saying that, you know, you have to be a Martha Stewart or you have to be this and that and the other, but, you know, you should take the effort and take the energy and understand that it's a privilege, that it's a virtue, that you've actually been given a gift by God to be a giver of life. And this is something that I value. I think it's worth something. I think it is worth something. I think that's objectively obvious, isn't it? So, you know, a lot of people talk about the ways that feminism has destroyed men, but it's destroyed the way women see themselves. You don't have bags of fat. You got something really special. So until next time, peace, truth, and love, guys.